Hey everyone, welcome to week 6 of That's What He Said, a deep dive into the Sermon on the Mount to learn how Jesus' words are still relevant today. Before we get into the sermon, we want to connect with you and see what's going on in your life. So head to mosaicchristian.org/connect. Let us know what's happening so that we can be praying for you actively this week. All right, let's get into this sermon.
What's up, Mosaic? My name is Ryan. I'm the groups director here. I got to come on staff last September right before we regathered, but I've been around this place for a while. So for the OGs of Mosaic, there's a timeline that you guys are going to get. I've been here since we had the high top tables in the back of Troy Hill, and I have a love and an affinity for those high top tables. I want to put them in the back of here. I want to figure that out in some way because it was in those seats where I found hope and I found grace in this place. See, John took our new staff on a tour through Mosaic's history, and it was standing outside that building a few weeks ago. If I'm honest, it just was nostalgic for me because it was in that building that I walked in for the first time, looking good on the outside, but on the inside feeling empty, lonely, and dying. And I hated most of who I was, but it was in that building that I found the mashup of truth and grace as people put their brokenness on display each and every week. And it was sitting on those bar stools in the back of that building on Saturday nights where I felt comfortable in church for the first time in a long time. And so whether you're new to Mosaic or you've been here since our original location of Theater 19, this is a place where hope is real and grace is always on tap. Over the past 6 years, the leaders of this church have believed in me, cared for me, spoken life into my soul. I'm a better leader, a better husband, a better father, and a better man because of it. I will forever be grateful to this place, those leaders, and specifically you all for giving me an opportunity to be a part of seeing people's lives changed each and every week as I help people find authentic community in groups. Now, besides loving Mosaic, I love a few other things. This is my wife, Kim, and this is not from this past week, but this past week we did get to go on vacation and celebrate our 5th anniversary, which was awesome. For my family in the room, no more kids are on the way, don't stress. It was great. We got to get away from the kids. We got to vacation, and it was awesome. I love who she is as a person, as a spouse, and as a mom, which leads to my next thing. I love my kids. These are my 3 kids. This is Noah, Emma, and Finn. They are 3, 2, and 1, which means 2 big things. 1, I really do love my wife, if you know what I'm saying. 2, our house is chaos. Now, I'm supposed to say it's full of love and laughter and happiness and joy. And all those things will potentially be true one day. But right now, our house is just full of crazy. Because I don't know if you've ever tried this, but raising 3 toddlers and trying to just get them to survive till the end of the day feels like enough of a task. But when you add all the emotional drama and baggage and stress that comes with one person touching another person's toy, it feels like everyone is going to lose their minds. But with all the crazy, and I love all the crazy, I love my wife and I love my kids. And also, I love on a completely different level, Chris Moneymaker. Now, if you don't know who Chris Moneymaker is, you probably aren't a child of 1985 like I am. But Chris Moneymaker in 2003 beat out 838 other poker players at the main event of the World Series of Poker and became the most famous amateur to ever accomplish the task. And I remember sitting on a couch in Ocean City, on the edge of that couch in a hotel room, watching Chris Moneymaker push in a hand that was complete rags against Sammy Farha, the poker player who was obviously going to win, and Farha bit the bluff and he just folded. And then a few hands later, I watched Chris take all of the money, and here's the reality of what happened. I watched a poker pro lose all of his chips to a guy who was used to playing poker in his garage with his buddies. And I learned 2 things over my next year as a senior in high school. 1, I'm not that good at poker. And 2, most of the bluffs I do, and really, in reality, most bluffs just don't work. So most of the time, my love for that culture shows up in the movies that I watch. I recently introduced my wife to Teddy KJB from Rounders so she could learn what it meant to pay that man his money. And our favorite movie has to be the movie 21. Not our favorite movie overall, but our favorite movie around this topic has to be the movie 21. If you haven't seen it, it's based on a true story about some kids from MIT who learn to count cards, wind up taking Vegas casinos for a ton of money playing blackjack. And the casino catches them, and the lead character, Ben, finds himself in a back boiler room with a few guys wearing some leather gloves. And you don't get to see much of what happens, but what you do know is that they want to get even. And so what you do see at the end is that Ben comes out with a black eye, a bloody nose, and some definite swelling on his face. And that situation happens to him because the casino wasn't okay with him taking advantage of them. They weren't okay, even though it might have been legal to count cards, they weren't okay with being played. And they decide to take it out on him physically. And when I tell you that story, there's nobody in here that seems to be like making eye contact with me that's like, I can't believe a casino would get upset about being taken advantage of. I can't believe that they'd want to get even with the people who stole from them. No, see, we get that when people wrong other people, those other people want to get even. And we get those other people who want to get even because those other people are us people. We all want to get even. It doesn't matter if it's our brother, our sister, our dad, our mom, some random guy at the mall who cuts us off, takes our space, and sends the wrong message. The reality is if they do us wrong, if they betray our trust, if they take advantage of us in some way, we want to get even. And I don't think you're better in this because I think we all want to get even. It's the reason that when the guy cuts you off in traffic, you speed up your car, you weave through traffic, and you risk your own life to cut him back off. Hypothetically speaking. I would obviously not do that. But had I done it, hypothetically, it would have been about getting even. It happens when you lose a board game in the last couple moves and decide to flip the board, yell at the people who wouldn't help you because you were winning, and storm off to your room. It's about getting even. It's the reason you react to your kid leaving a bowl in the middle of the floor like it's a grenade about to explode, and instead of giving them clear direction, you decide to be your own grenade and scream at them. It's about trying to get even. It's the reason that somebody makes a harmless joke about you at school or at work, and you decide to construct a story or twist something that was shared with you in confidence, and you figure out a way to destroy them with it. It's about getting even. And here's the thing about every one of those situations that we already know is true. In those moments, our reaction tends to be a bit bigger than the situation. And I'm not saying you weren't wronged, and I'm definitely not saying that they were right. But I am saying that your reaction and my reaction and our reaction doesn't always match the situation. And it's in situations like that that author Lisa TerKeurst suggests our reactions are manipulated by the lens of unresolved past hurts. A bitter lens leads to a bitter reaction. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this quote. I love it because it is true about you all. I love it because it's true about the people that I know. I love it that it's true about the people that I relate to, and it gives me like a lens to look through the situation. I hate it because it's true about me. Think about it. Risking your own life to chase a guy through traffic may have more to do with the fact that you feel like you have nothing to call your own. And in taking your lane, he's just another person who's taking something from you. It could be about something deeper. Losing the board game in the last couple moves, deciding to flip the board because you're not feeling like you have anybody helping you in life, or it could be more about the fact that you don't feel like you have anybody helping you in life. And when your friends and family decided to stop helping you because you were winning the game, it just reminded you of all the other times you felt like you were alone. It could be about something deeper. Reacting to your kid leaving a bowl on the floor like it's a grenade may be more about the fact that you feel like nobody hears you or even wants to hear you. It could be about something deeper. Twisting stories, breaking confidence may have less to do with what she said and more to do with what your mom says. And that for years you've never felt valued or valuable, and her statement stirred up all of the baggage of your childhood. It could be about something deeper. And it's in this place where we're aware of our tendencies to get even, and we're aware of our influence from our past. From this place of awareness, it's the place where I want to take you to take a look at something that Jesus says. Because Jesus steps in and offers us something better. Something better than simply reacting, something better than seeking vengeance, something better than just trying to make them pay. And if you're new to Mosaic or if you're new to this series, we're taking a look at Jesus' most famous sermon. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And he sits down with a group of people that he knows, that he cares about, a group of people that have been following through the countryside for a while, and he just wants to share with them some truths of life. And he compares like the norms of society and the normal way that they live to a better way to live, a life that he says is with God. And he says, listen, if you learn to live this life with God instead of by yourself, ultimately you're going to experience life and life to its fullest potential. He says, I want to show you a better way to live. So let's take a look at what he says. You've heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's vengeance. Like, that's getting even. But he says, don't resist an evil person. If somebody slaps you on the right cheek, offer them the other cheek too. And if you're sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give them your coat too. And if a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, I want you to carry it for 2 miles. And give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. See, here's the big point I want you to get this morning. Jesus is calling us to move from being closed-fisted to open-handed. And I think many of us come in this room convinced that the opposite of vengeance is forgiveness, but I actually think Jesus is calling us to take it one step further and choose to be generous to those who wrong us. For those of us in the room who are followers of Christ, we have to submit to the passage I just read simply because we follow Jesus, whether it's convenient or not. But for those of you who are in the room who are like, I'm not sure where I'm at with this whole church thing. I'm not sure where I'm at with this whole Jesus thing. I'm not sure where I'm at with this whole God thing. I'm still trying to feel this out. I just want to invite you this morning for the next few minutes to consider the invitation from Jesus about how to respond to the ways that you've been wronged. Because here's what I believe you already know. Getting even feels good in the moment, but never satisfies your soul. Think about it. You've gotten even at times. It does not satisfy your soul. Deep down, you know that getting even doesn't give you the peace you so deeply desire. Cutting that guy off in traffic helps them see you, but it doesn't help you feel valued. Screaming at your kids helps everybody in the house hear you, but it doesn't help you feel heard. Getting that coworker fired for what they did or for what they said makes them remember you, but it doesn't get you your job back. See, the reality is that hurting the other person gives you satisfaction in the moment, but it doesn't restore your soul and it doesn't return what you lost. Jesus, on the other hand, says, I want to give you rest. In Matthew 11, 28 through 30, he says he'll show us how to have a real rest, and that if we pattern our lives after his, he would teach us to experience the unforced rhythms of his grace. And I don't know about you, but that is the life that I want. That is something like when I hear those words of Jesus, like deep down in my soul, I'm like, I long for that. You can pursue vengeance and you can achieve it only to discover that you're still stuck in the pit of your own emptiness, and now you've pulled the person you hate the most into the pit beside you. Makes me think of that Andy Dwyer song from Parks and Rec. If you're a Parks and Rec fan, you'll get it. But he sings a song about I fell in the pit, you fell in the pit, we all fell in the pit. Now, I'm not going to sing it for you because my voice doesn't match the voices that have already been up on stage, and I don't want to mess up anything that you experienced this morning. But you can look it up on YouTube. It's a pretty funny clip. To quote the great theologian Denzel Washington, there are 2 kinds of pain in this world. A pain that hurts, and a pain that alters. And I started this message with some cushy examples of getting cut off in traffic and things that annoy us or just cause us some temporary pain. But some of us in the room have dealt with the type of pain that alters. And you might be sitting here thinking you can let go of pain that hurts, but I want to encourage you even more to consider applying what Jesus says about forgiveness to the people who have caused you life-altering pain. Now, without getting into the details and all the details of my past, I know what it is to experience pain that alters. I've been betrayed, cheated on, manipulated, and emotionally destroyed, and it's in those moments where getting even feels like the only option I have that Jesus steps in and says, I have something better. See, the very people Jesus speaks to are in this sermon are experiencing life-altering pain. At the time of Jesus' sermon, the Jewish people were under Roman occupation, which meant the Roman government was in their territory and could do what they wanted. They taxed the people, they oppressed the people, they enforced their authority at any time. One example Jesus references is about carrying their gear for a mile. Roman soldiers, as part of the Roman occupation, had the right to demand that any Jewish citizen carry their gear for a mile. Just to give you a picture of this, it would be like David Goggins or Jocko Willnick walking in this room carrying a huge rucksack and picking out some 4'5", 6th grader and saying, here, carry my gear for me, just head a mile that way and I'll catch up. What it would look like is the picture that we all see of like that 6th grade kid who's scared to use their locker, so they just put all their books in their backpack and they just start slowly tipping back when they put it on. And in middle school, that was funny to watch. Under Roman occupation, it is infuriating. Because the people who are asking you to do it and the people who are demanding you do it, one, are far more capable, but two, they're only doing it because they want to remind you that you're under their authority. And I think if you had done that, let's just suppose for a minute you had carried the gear of a soldier for a mile. And then you hike your mile back to get back to where Jesus was so you can hear a sermon from him and get some encouragement. I think you'd sit down, and when Jesus starts with, when a soldier demands you carry their gear for a mile, I think you'd be sitting there like, oh, come on, Jesus. I'm ready for this. He goes, I want you to carry it 2 miles. What? That's not really what I wanted. Like, Jesus, I want to get even. Jesus, I don't want to carry their gear at all. Jesus, I want to object. Why in the world would I carry it an extra mile? But I think Jesus was a genius, because in calling them to be generous and go the extra mile, he knew it would disarm the enemy. Follow me for a second on this. It doesn't take away Rome's positional authority as the government, but it does take away their personal authority over the emotional state of the people they were oppressing, because choosing generosity over vengeance didn't affect the Romans. It moved the Jewish people from being a thermometer to being a thermostat. Instead of being people whose emotional state just rose and fell based on the temperature of society and the people that they were in the room with, they could become people who regulated the emotional temperature of the rooms they were in and actually experience peace. So here's my question for you this morning. What if Jesus is inviting you to be an emotional thermostat for your family, or for your workplace, or for the world you live in? And what if just somehow, in some way, what if accepting his invitation would satisfy the deepest cravings of your soul? See, I'm convinced we could spend so much of our lives trying to pull people down only to find they end up in the pit beside us. And instead of constantly pulling each other down, I think Jesus is inviting us to get healthy. And getting healthy doesn't worry about pulling them in the pit or even being in the pit ourselves. Getting healthy allows us to grow beyond the level of the pit. I'm convinced the ultimate vengeance that you could actually have is using what somebody meant for evil against you and producing good out of it. And as I've been preparing this message and working on it, I've had this constant question that I'm wondering about. I wonder, literally still today, I don't have an answer to this, but I'm wondering if one of the ways that God is going to fulfill Romans 8:28 of working all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. I wonder if one of the ways he's going to fulfill that starts with you getting up off your mat and climbing out of the pit and stop worrying about who else is in there. And you might be sitting here thinking, Ryan, I get it. I still kind of want vengeance, if I'm honest. But I'm hearing, and I can see what you're saying, that even if I get vengeance, it might not satisfy my soul. But here's my problem. Even if I choose to not seek out vengeance, I don't know how to move beyond what happened to me. I don't know how to move from being bitter to being better. Well, that's why I'm here. So let me help. For the next few minutes, I want to give you 3 practical truths that you can take today that'll help you start moving from being close-fisted to open-handed when it comes to the ways you've been wronged. The first one is this: you must face your past. One counselor puts it this way: if our reaction is hysterical, it is historical. We can feel very out of control if bitterness and resentment are part of how we've recorded the events of our history. We said it before that if we look through a bitter lens, we'll get a bitter reaction. Therefore, we have to ask the question when we react the wrong way, where is this coming from? Comedian Bill Burr, I was watching this on YouTube recently. Comedian Bill Burr was on Conan O'Brien, and he was having a conversation with him about a recent fight that he had had with his wife that left her asking the question, where is all this anger coming from? And his answer, in my opinion, was gold. He said to her, honey, how many stories of my childhood and how many examples from my past do I have to give you before you follow the breadcrumbs back to the psycho that you married? And here's why his reaction is gold to me. I think he's funny, but here's why his reaction is gold to me. Because even Bill Burr recognizes that sometimes his reactions are hysterical because they're historical. That the baggage of his past creeps into his present. And I know what some of you might be thinking. I don't want to deal with my past. Like, I don't want to process it. I don't want to look at it. I hated what happened. I don't want to go back there. But here's what you need to understand. Unless you deal with your past, it will continue to haunt you into your future. And you think, well, fine. I'm in church. I want God to deal with my past. It'll save me from having to do it, and he can take care of it. But here's something you need to hear from me this morning. God is not going to heal what you continue to hide. God is not going to heal what you continue to hide. I'm going to venture to say that some of us have never experienced healing from the things of our past because we are unwilling to face our past and connect the dots of how it affects us today. And so if this is you, I want to give you an example to follow. There's one of my boys here at Mosaic named Ryan. He was in my group last semester. He regularly talked about the tension that he felt in his current relationships of marriage, parenting, and work. And the more he talked, the more some people in our group noticed some similar patterns and themes to the type of conflict that he was dealing with and the tension he carried from it. Everything came to a head one night when a guy in my group asked him this question: why are you carrying all the weight that isn't yours? And in that moment, it was like a light bulb went off. He sat back around the fire pit and he started connecting the dots to some of the pain of his past and the lack of the trust that it calls for him today. And here's the best part, my favorite part. He didn't quit the group. He didn't run from the past that he didn't like. Instead, he kept coming. He kept asking questions. He kept engaging in conversation. And a couple weeks ago, he decided to sign up for Crucible to get some professional help navigating his struggles. And in the middle of May, he attended his initial weekend, and he was full of nerves, and he was full of tension, and he was full of fear. He had no idea what to expect, but he walked out a different man because he did the hard work of facing his past. So if you want to experience healing from what happened to you, you cannot continue hiding. It's time you take a long look in the mirror, get real with yourself, and get real with God, and face your past. The second truth is this: your bitterness hurts you, not them. Whenever I have the opportunity to speak at a funeral, I challenge people to recognize that their bitterness isn't hurting anyone but them, and then I'll encourage them to forgive and let go of something instead of remain bitter and hold on to it. And I typically do it at funerals because at funerals, like in the presence of death, we all tend to look at life a little bit differently, and people are a little bit more willing to take a sober look at how they live life and see if there's a better way. But just for a moment, I want to share a few things with you that I'd normally convey at a funeral because I think this is a great opportunity. You don't have to wait till somebody dies. This is a great opportunity to take a fresh look at your life and consider maybe you're not living it the best way. Maybe you are. What could you possibly change? So here's some things that I communicate. One author says that anger and bitterness are like acid. It does more damage to the vessel in which it is stored than the object on which it is poured. Its primary danger is found in storing it up, not in pouring it out. And forgiveness isn't just about letting things go or pretending that they never happen and hoping that they don't come back. No, forgiveness is giving up your right to retaliate. And here's the reality. I don't think you should forgive because it has the potential to change the world around you, although that's a great thing. I want to encourage you to forgive because nursing a grudge is hurting you more than it's hurting the other person. So if you've been choosing to be bitter, if you've been choosing to hold grudges, here's my question for you. What future are you sacrificing on the altar of rewriting history? Because here's what I want you to know. You can't rewrite history. Whatever happened to you, however it played out, whatever went down, it's done. And no amount of trying and striving and revenge is going to undo what's already been done because history is written in ink and in blood, and it is not changing. Sorry, I messed up my page. If this is you, you have to follow the example of one of our group leaders. She's a mom with some awesome kids that love her. She's in a marriage full of love and passion. She works hard, and everybody around her respects her for who she is and for what she does. But what most people don't know about her is that she grew up in a house that was unaware of her abuse and her abuser. From ages 8 to 10, she was molested, she was raped, and she was manipulated by somebody she was supposed to be able to trust. She prayed for the pain to stop. It didn't. She prayed for her abuser to stop. He didn't. And when she finally moved away at age 10, she thought it would all be better. But at 15, 5 years after the abuse had stopped, she began having vivid nightmares of specific sexually abusive moments. And according to her, she'd wake up in a sweaty panic, laying in bed, weeping in pain, scared to death to close her eyes for fear that the dream would just start back over. And those nightmares made her angry. And they made her bitter, and they caused her to doubt God. But fortunately for her, she had some solid people in her life and people she could talk to. And in the power of community and through the power of community, she walked through a process that called her to address her bitterness and consider forgiving her abuser. And forgiveness for her and potentially for us paved the path to get rid of her bitterness. And as she told me her story, it all seemed to hinge on this moment and decision. Would she choose to follow the patterns of the world, close her fists, and remain bitter? Or follow the calling of her God, open her hands, and choose to forgive? So here's what she did. She decided to pray for the man who had hurt her. She prayed that God would forgive him. And she asked God to give her the strength to forgive him. She prayed that God would take away her pain and make her whole again. She prayed because she knew there was nothing else she could do if she wanted to be healthy. And to this day, God continues to heal the deepest wound of her life because she chose forgiveness over bitterness. And even though the pain isn't fully gone and the nightmares still happen from time to time, she's satisfied because she's satisfied with what God is doing in her life to bring healing. What used to cause her deep pain has become a reminder of pain and the very platform for her ministry. And when I look at the life she has now, and when I hear the stories of the ladies in her group finding healing from deep pain, I am so thankful she decided to do what seemed impossible. I'm thankful that she decided to forgive when it would have just been easier and far more normal to remain bitter. And here's what you need to hear from her this morning. She said this: I didn't forgive because it was easy. I forgave because I realized that nursing a grudge was hurting me far more than it was hurting him. And my life is better because of it. So let me ask you again. What future are you sacrificing on the altar of rewriting history? Because your bitterness is killing you, not them. The anger that wells up inside of you right now as I talk, and as you think about letting it go, and it's making your fist clench, isn't affecting their fist at all. In the moment when they hurt you, you felt so out of control because of what they did to you. But the harsh reality is you're still not in control of them now, no matter how much you try to hold on. No matter how much you want to be, your bitterness only has the potential to destroy your life and the lives of those around you, not the person who wronged you. You can't take control of them, so it's time to take control of you. Which leads us to our third truth. God's peace and your vengeance cannot coexist. See, in Scripture, the Bible says that God promises us peace that passes all understanding, and that is awesome. For the followers of Jesus, we get promised peace that passes all understanding, but it cannot coexist within our soul with the vengeance and the passion for getting even that we so desperately have. So you have to ask this question this morning: what does my soul really want? Is it sitting in a pit surrounded by those who have done me wrong? Or is it peace that passes all understanding and rest from my weary spirit? Lisa Turkhurst, in her book, Forgiving What You Can't Forget, reflects on one of her quiet times with God and says, here's the invitation I think God is giving all of us. Turn to me and trust this whole situation to me. I'm doing a bigger work than you know. And he says, you don't really want revenge. You actually want healing. You don't want more chaos. You want peace. You don't really want them to suffer, even though right now you feel like you do. What you deep down desire is that you don't want to be hurt again. See, in the moment we want to get even, but in the end, peace is better for our souls. And there's multiple stories of people here at Mosaic that I can tell you. I'm just going to share a few of people dealing with their stuff. This is the guy who subscribed to the White Flag podcast because he knew he needed help submitting his anger and his impatience to God. It's the lady who signed up for a group on dealing with her past because she had some dad issues that she had to work through. It's the man who found out about the affair and immediately signed up for personal counseling and couples counseling because he wants peace in his soul and reconciliation for his marriage more than he desires a moment of vengeance against his wife. See, these men and women chose to work on it. They choose to show up and start a conversation with God, with community, and with a counselor. Their story isn't over and they don't know exactly where it's headed, but they're willing to step into the arena and follow Jesus, even if it doesn't work out like they hope. So let me ask you, what step do you need to take to address your burning desire for vengeance? Is it joining a group and getting in a healthy community? I'm the groups guy. I can help with that. Is it signing up for counseling and getting some one-on-one professional help to deal with your past? Is it subscribing to John's White Flag podcast to get guidance on how to quiet your spirit and submit your full self to God? Is it facing your past? Saying, look, today I'm going to get out a mirror and I am going to sit there and I'm going to actually deal with what has happened to me. I'm at least going to be honest with myself and with God about what I've experienced. Is it accepting the truth that your bitterness isn't hurting anybody but you? Is it recognizing that the peace you so deeply desire and your desire for vengeance can't actually coexist, so you're going to have to learn to let go of one of those? But whatever your next step is, I want to challenge you to take it this morning, because when you choose to be closed-fisted, you are not open to receive the peace and rest that God has for you. The people whose stories I shared this morning couldn't have moved on if they didn't leverage the power of God in their lives. Because catch this, they didn't want to forgive the people who had wronged them. None of those people whose stories I shared said, oh, I wanted to get rid of this. I wanted to forgive the people who had hurt me. No, they did it because God calls them to, not because they wanted to. And not only does God call them to do that, but he equips them and he shows them how to do it. And here's what they'd want you to know as we wrap this thing up this morning. God isn't calling you to do something he isn't willing to do himself. Whether you know it or not, God has a reason and a right for vengeance against your soul. Because from the beginning of the world until now, God has set man and woman at the pinnacle of his creation, and he calls us to follow his rules, and we don't. He sets things in order and says, this is the way I want you to function, and we just go our own direction. We fall short of everything God has called us to do and asked of us. And the only way to make that right without it costing us our lives was God choosing to send a sacrifice. And when he had to pick one, he chose his own son. See, God has a reason and a right to seek vengeance against us for the things that we've done and the rules that we've broken, but he chooses to give us grace. He chooses to sacrifice his son instead of us, and he chooses to offer us hope. It's the reason in just a minute we're going to take communion. It's a reminder for those of us who have already followed Jesus that we have real hope in Christ and that he steps into our mess of striving and struggling and straining to get even, and he ultimately invites us to something far better. But for those of you who have never followed Jesus, he is offering you something called grace. And the question you have to ask this morning is, am I willing to receive it? If you've come to a place where you're at the end of yourself and you need something better, you need something different, you need something that sounds like the unforced rhythms of his grace, I want you to grab your phone, scan the QR code behind me, and check the baptism box. Somebody from our team is going to call you this week. It might be me, it might be somebody else. But here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to make sure you understand what it means to follow Jesus, and we're going to help you receive the grace that he has for you. Because in the end, there is something better than striving for perfection and trying to even out all the wrongs that you've ever done. In the end, there is something better for you, and that something is called grace. Let's pray. God, I thank you for loving us. I thank you for caring about us as part of fallen humanity. And God, I think it's worth recognizing this morning that while your peace and our desire for vengeance can't coexist. Our pain and your love can coexist. That we can be hurting and you can be loving. And so, God, I pray this morning just a prayer that is real, that recognizes, God, we are hurting in this room. Things have been done to us. We've made mistakes. We've screwed up our past, and it's affecting us today. And God, we're tired of hurting from it. So we need you to be Lord. We need you to be leader. We need you to show us a better way. And God, I pray that you would give us the courage and the boldness and the strength we need to take the steps to recognize truth and move our lives forward like you're leading us to. God, thank you for loving us. Thanks for coming to this earth to show us a better way and then ultimately being the sacrifice that could satisfy our soul. God, thanks for loving us. It's in your name I pray. Amen.
Just like Ryan said, if you want to have a conversation about what it means to give your life to Jesus and commit to following him, head to mosaicchristian.org/connect and check that baptism box, and we will reach out to you this week. We cannot wait to talk to you.